Hello ladies and gentlemen of YouTube, and welcome back to another edition of my videos. And well, we've got 3 videos in one today, or 3 games in one, as I wanted to show off a bit of the Smith-Morra Gambit. It's been part of my repertoire now for, I would say, about 2-3 years. I've had quite a lot of success with it over the boards. I haven't actually had a single loss with it over the board, I believe, so yeah, it's quite nice actually when you think about it. Online's a bit of a different story. It's not, I haven't got the best record with it online. I put it down to the fact that I think when you play it online, a lot of black players are much more prepared against it, if that makes sense. And certainly looking at the database, you can see here that D4 is played much more frequently online on the Lead Chess database than it is on sort of like a normal Masters or even on the board database. So that makes me think that people are much more prepared. They know kind of what to do. I'll be totally honest, when I have played it over the board in this sort of analysis afterwards, I often find my opponent just sort of say to me, I had no idea what was going on there. So I think black doesn't tend to maybe look at that line particularly too much when they're playing the Sicilian. They're much more likely to look at some of the main lines. But I don't know. Maybe you guys who are Sicilian players out there, maybe you'll know more than me. So let me know if in the comments below if you play the Sicilian and if you prepare for the Smith-Morra or any of the anti-Sicilians as much as you do the main line. But anyway, let's have a look at these 3 games. They're very quick 3 games, all involving some type of quick trappy blunder against the Smith-Morra. So let's have a look at the first one. So this was just a quick 15-minute plus 15-second game that I just wanted to play online. So normal's looking position. We get all our pieces out, all to good squares. So this is a very nice setup in the Smith-Morra, and you just look to castle. You maybe just get your queen to maybe c7, and yeah, it's a nice compact solid structure. Bear in mind black is up a pawn, so as long as he can try and hold on to the pawn, he should do absolutely fine. So I play rook to d1, and now potentially threatening just to push e5 here now, which would be quite interesting, as I'll then be attacking the knight potentially, and also attacking this pawn. So queen comes to c7, so now defending this, but there's a big problem for black here now, and by playing the queen to c7, he's played it without the move a6, and you sort of maybe a couple of my other analysis videos that I've looked at with the Smith-Morra, this a6 move is a really key move. It's a key in pretty much most Sicilians, most Najdorfs, or even, well, pretty much most of them, to be honest with you. Kalishnikovs, I think, use a6. The Dragons tend to use a6 as well. It's always just a great move because it's a great defensive move, but it also gets on with black's attack. The problem here now, we're playing queen to c7, is it allows me to play knight to b5. And now black is by no means losing here, I should stress. He's actually still got a fine position. The key move here is queen to b8. So just running back into this hole. It looks pretty bad for black. In reality, it's not actually that bad. You should do absolutely fine here. Play could potentially continue with bishop to f4. e5 can be played to block this bishop. And there's some really interesting continuations. There is one game from looks like 1992. My gosh, which just continued bishop to g5, castles, and then h3 to stop the bishop coming through square. Black, I think, is doing fine. White's got a lot of activity, but he's still down a pawn, so he's obviously got to justify his pawn sacrifice earlier. But I think White's got a nice position, but black is by no means bad either. Okay, so going back, what actually happened in the game? Well, my opponent blundered here, decided to play queen to a5, a very bizarre move. I didn't quite understand the whole point of it. And here I played knight takes here on d6, so I had a free pawn. Very nice. Probably better, in fact, and the computer really likes this move, is b4. You may think that it allows him to just capture this pawn now, but obviously I can now play d2, and now this knight is going to get lost. So black's problems get much worse. So let's say a move like, well, let's go d5 here. Let's make it a bit complicated. Try and complicate things. It looks like everything is defended, but a3 comes in, and now the knight is lost. So definitely not a good position to want to get into. So instead of b4, I decided actually just to cut my losses, take the pawn here. This is still a fine position for me, if a slight inaccuracy, as now after bishop captures, my rook comes crashing in. It looks like a very powerful rook now. Here my opponent decided to castle, and I now play bishop to g5, getting one of my last pieces developed, and now looking at oops, not that square, looking to come to d1 with my rook and come down this lovely open d file. So let's see what my opponent played. My opponent decided to come back with a knight to e8. Obviously the threat here, I was looking just to capture this knight off and ruin black's pawn structure over here. So knight come back. My rook came back to d2 because it was under attack. f6 was played. My bishop came back to e3. Still a very active square, I have to say. And then my other rook came in. b5 was played. I just captured this. I didn't really see the whole point of this move, but now he can get out b7. I think that was maybe the idea, because he couldn't really develop it over this way. So he sacks a pawn to do that, but now it allows me to pile on the pressure on this knight. So I just simply switched over. It's all looking pretty bad for white now. I start turning the screws, so to speak, and well, at this point, after bishop to d7, I'm now threatening to capture the rook, also threatening the e6 move here. At this point, my opponent resigned. His position is pretty bad here. There's not really a whole lot he can really do. He could maybe play a move like, I don't know, bishop to a6, but this just prolongs the pain. I'd move my queen here. I'm still threatening to take the rook or take this pawn and have a very dominant position. So my opponent just had enough at this point and decided to resign. So a very nice instructive game just to show you some of the power or the venom of the Smith-Morra. One false move or one bad move and you can normally be absolutely toast against it. So I'm now going to show you a couple other games where I played in the Smith-Morra. So this is one of my recent games, and I wanted to show you quite a common trap that I get in some of my games. I'm just going to flip the board 1 second. Oops, I don't want to do that. You get to see the end there. Okay, so in the game, normal Smith-Morra stuff happened. And here my opponent played d6, and it was very interesting because I was doing some homework on this game, and I noticed that he played bishop g4 a lot, which is actually a mistake in the Smith-Morra, particularly at this early point. The point being, after bishop to c4, there is this problem with the f7 square. So now after bishop to g4, I can now capture here on f7. The point being, after the king captures, I jump in with the check and I take here. It's very funny because this game actually reminded me of another game that I played. It was actually over the board, and I thought I wanted to show you this game because I just wanted to show you basically the problem that black has now got in this position. So let's just jump forwards to the bishop g4. So I actually had this on an over the board game, so I was very happy when I saw this. I was thinking, yes, I'm going to have a very good game now. A little funny story about this game. I normally, what I do in my routine when I'm playing on club night, so I normally play like on a Tuesday, I go to my local club. So my routine was at the time before lockdown, was I would do, I run 2 classes of chess on Tuesday. So I do my classes, I finished the schools that I go to, and then I go straight to the playing area, and normally I'm there about maybe an hour or an hour and a half before the actual club opens at the social club that I go to. And I get myself a drink and do a bit of prep before the games or whatever, or just chill out writing stuff or whatever. But on this particular occasion, I turned up obviously an hour early, and as I get out my car, I hear a massive hissing noise, and I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh, what is this hissing noise? And I look at the side of my front right tyre and I see it's been punctured. I'd gone over a pothole. Funny enough, that pothole got filled in about a day later, which is very annoying, but that's another story. So I'd punctured my tyre and I was like, oh no, what do I do? I've got a game in an hour and a half. My tyre's punctured. I can't just leave my car in the state it's in. So I'm calling a tow truck, to take my car back to home. At the time I didn't live very far from where the playing venue is. Of course, I've moved a little bit, but I called the tow truck. The tow truck arrives. It's thankfully it only came in about 30 minutes, but it still took about 20 minutes for it to get onto the actual tow truck itself, and another 10 minutes to get to the thing. So I said to one of the other captains, I said, look, I might be running a bit late. Just play on without me. Start my clock, and I'll try and get here as soon as I can. So I go back to my home. I order a taxi, and I get to the board. I'm absolutely, flustered and like, oh my god. I'm sat down, and my opponent he's actually quite a strong player. He's sort of 1900 strength player, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this is horrible. I've got a really strong player. I'm flustered. I'm exhausted. I've just been dealing with all this puncture. Anyway, the game started like this, and I just kind of I gave a sigh of relief when I saw this position, as I now was able to capture here. Oops, not this move. I was able to capture here. Much better. And I've got a nice winning position. So in the actual game, he captured here. I came with the knights. King came to e8, and I capture here. Now you might be thinking to yourself, you look at this position, quite a lot of the beginners might be looking at this position and go, well, what's the big deal? The material's even. What's so good about this position? Well, the problem is this king is really unsafe. It can no longer castle. It's stuck in the center for the rest of the game. And at the very least, even if I don't make any more material games, I'm going to gain a few tempo on the fact that I can harass the king and deal some very, very quick checks or attacks against it. And at the very least, he might have to sacrifice a few pieces just to survive the attack. So in the actual game, my opponent here played knight to f6, makes sense, hitting the queen. I now moved my queen into e6, a really, really powerful move. I guess I'm not really threatening queen to f7, but this just frustrates black's development. He is not going to get his bishop out anytime soon. His rook is trapped. It's not a very pleasant position. If he does try to maybe exchange off, this is fine too. I've got then a knight wedged inside of his position. So definitely not a pleasant way to go. My opponent played knight to d4 to try and hit my queen. I moved in with the check. I wanted to move the king over to this square, which looks a little bit more unsound, a little bit more unsafe. I then castled short, h6 was played, and I now played my queen back to c4 to try and swap off the knights. H takes on g5, I captured here on d4, and e5 was played. So now black's position is starting to look, he's trying to untangle himself, albeit, but e5 is probably not the best move, as it just it allows me to open up the position. And when you've got a king that's stuck in the center like this, it's always actually beneficial for you to open up the position. And this move is just a bit too loose, I would say. So I now threw in the check on a4. King came to c8. I then capture here on dg5. So I managed to recover a pawn now. So I'm actually a pawn up. This king on c8 is not very well placed, as I'm going to very quickly get it into a threatened check here. Bishop to e7. Rook came to c1, and the king ran away to b8. He wanted to get out of the check. I then decided to capture G2 captures. If he took with the bishop, by the way, I would have been quite happy with this, as I could just potentially jump my my knight into that square, and well, I think it looks quite good. Also, I guess, is that the only reason? I think there was another reason why I did this. What was the reason? No, I think that was it. Looking at the engine just for some feedback there. But yeah, he just did that. I moved in with my knight. I'm now hitting the bishop. Queen now came to D8, D7, so I'm now threatening just a simple checkmate in 1. A6 was played, trying to survive the check. I now took on E7, and I thought when I played this, I thought for a minute, I was like, oh no, I've messed this up a little bit, as now Queen came to H6, now threatening just a simple checkmate in 1, but is absolutely fine, as I've got a lovely continuation here. So I now threw in the check first, and then I had a lovely checkmate in 1. Another smothered mate. Hey, we have to reset the timer again, I'm afraid, on this game. So there we go. So that was another very, very nice demonstration. I've got a few other games just like this. I might, again, I'll have to see if I can try and find them. I keep a lot of my annotations in a big folder somewhere. I need to, at some point, organise through them. So let's now show you the final game. So the final game was was this position once again. So we've already just seen there the king to takes on f7 is no good, but is the king moving to d7 any better? Well, let's see what happens here in this position. So I now captured here on g8. The idea of this was I essentially want to get my queen to this square. If the rook captures, which obviously it does, he doesn't want to be down, queen to b3, I'm now threatening both the rook and I'm also threatening on b7. A very, very nice position. So what does black do in this position? Well, to be honest with you, there isn't really much he can do. In the game he played queen to b6, which probably isn't any good here. As well, it allows me just to capture the rook without any dramas. Is there anything else he can do here? I mean, we looked at maybe just capture this, but even then I can take here on g8. It's very interesting actually. There is in fact 3 games from this position on the Lee Chess database where in fact black has won 2 out of 3 games, which makes me think that maybe they've managed to trap this queen somehow, but this can't be any good. If the capture's here, rook to g1, bishop to h3, queen takes here. I think this is absolutely fine. We're now hitting the bishop. I just can't see any way that this is any good for black. He's in a pretty terrible position. I'll just be looking to develop. I'm up material as well, so yeah, I can't really see how there's any good. Bishop to e3 would be pretty good, and then maybe just castles long. I think white is doing absolutely fine. So going back then into what was actually played. So queen came to b6. Very happy to see this. And I captured on g8. He took on f3, so I decided to capture back. And then knight to g4. A bit of an annoying move actually. I did think for quite some time. I looked at potential ideas. Basically the threat is this. So I looked at this bishop to e3 idea. It turns out it's not actually all that good. The problem with it, so the line I was looking at was this knight coming here. I'd move my king up. If queen captures, which looks very tempting, this is absolutely fine. In fact, actually black is just losing even more. So that's not a good position. Also, if he captured here as well, again, I'm not overly worried. It looks pretty bad. But again, I'm up material. He's only got a queen to try and checkmate me, which just isn't enough. So, you know, I'd be simply threatening to do stuff like this. Even if rook to c8, queen to b3 just equalizes very, very quickly. So that's always his problem, is his queen to b3 idea is always very strong. Another problem though that I didn't foresee is after let's say here, you can actually take b2 straight away. The point being, after rook to c1, knight to c2, this just gets a little bit annoying. I think is the best way to describe it. But in actual fact, I think this is actually pretty much the same position that we just looked at. I think this is absolutely fine for white as well. So in actual fact, I think we've just reached a transposition through this line. So okay, going back anyway. So it was a little bit of an annoying move. So I just decided, do you know what? I'm just not gonna go into this the craziness. So I just castled along. It does allow him to capture here with a check. I decided to go to h1. I did think about going to g2, but it just allows a few more checks, and I just thought, you know, I don't want to start marching my king up where it could potentially get checkmated. So I just scurried over to h1. I do need to be careful here. There are some potential ideas of just simple things like this, but again, I'm not too worried. I've got enough time to defend these, so again, I'm not super panicky about this. In the game, my opponent played knight to e5, which I just didn't really get. You know, I think the knight is quite well placed here. It's doing quite a lot, so I didn't really quite understand. Maybe he was just worried about me simply putting in this threat. I honestly don't know. Another move I was worried about was potentially queen to a6. But this is fine. I can actually just go here and everything is defended. The point being, actually, he's got a cheeky threat here. So, but after this move, everything's defended. So I think I'm doing absolutely fine. Right. So he played knight to e5. I just played bishop to e3. I don't want to mess around here. Let's just get our pieces developed now. I could capture here again. Don't want to play too crazy here. I'm up a clear piece regardless. He captured the pawn, so he's now got a 2 pawns for a rook, and I played queen to b3, just going straight for the straight swap here. There's a couple of exchanges. Again, not the most accurate way of playing, but I felt as though that this should be still winning for me. a6 was played. Simply, I was going to be threatening to capture here on the next move. I now played knight to d5. I'm threatening to come into b6 and fork both the king and the rook. And it's just not great for black. He's in a very passive position. I'm still up material. He plays rook to e8. And I was just more worried about messing this position up more than anything. But after f4, he came to c6. Very surprised he didn't come to g4. I thought that would have been much better. But even then, I'm not that worried. I've just got to be a bit careful. I want to try and restrict any play from this bishop. As soon as he can get in, maybe move like g6, this bishop starts to come to life a little bit. And I want to try and restrict all his pieces as much as I can. But in the actual game, knight came to c6. I played f5 anyway. Again, just simple plan. I'm trying to prevent moves like g6. If he does play it here, I can just push forward now. If e6, wow, that's actually pretty nice. I can come in here now. Oh, gorgeous. Okay, that's really nice. But it's a good continuation for me. So I'm not worried, and you know, I'm stopping the bishop from coming to g7, which I don't want it to do, because it's going to hit my rook. It's going to get a little tempo, and yeah, there's not very nice. It's still fine for me, but I don't want to try and restrict what he can do. So king came to c8. I moved my rook to c1. For some reason, I thought that this was a threat. In actual reality, I'm just going to be slightly down. I'm actually lose a pawn in this, but it's still fine. But I think it was a bit of a waste of time, though. e6 was played. I jumped into b6 with check. King to c7. I decided to capture here, not mess around. I jumped my knight back to d5, which is a really nice square to go to. With the check, king came to b8, and now played rook to f1. Clear threat. Obviously, if he captures here, I take here with a check. So, in fact, actually, it's almost mate. In fact, so this would be mate in 3. So he definitely doesn't want to do that. So he jumped back to e8 to try and defend everything. I now infiltrate here on f7. Once you can get a rook into these files, into the sort of 7th rank, it's such a dangerous piece, as now I'm just going to be swinging back and forth between the pawns and just winning material. That's why it's so powerful to get it onto those squares. Knight came to e5, so now hitting this rook. Bit of an annoying move, but I did calculate this and thought actually I can put my rook to c7 where it looks quite safe. His knight came back to c6. I moved my other rook over to f1 and knight came to e7. I had a very nice tactic to finish this game. The problem I've got is obviously I've just got to be a little bit careful. There's a lot of things going on here, but hopefully you can find the winning move that I played in this position. So I'll just sort of show you some of the problems I potentially have. If I capture this knight, although not losing, after king takes here, this gets a bit harder for me to convert this, so I want to try and avoid any dramas for myself. So I don't want to do that, but instead I played just simply rook takes on f8 and my opponent resigned. The point being here, after king captures, I can take here with the rook, and there's too many problems for black. If he just tries to, I don't know, throw in the check here, and let's say, I don't know, he tries to go after this pawn, there's a simple problem with this back row. It's just simply mate and 1. So in actual fact, black is doomed to passivity with rook to g8, and well, it's just not a pleasant position. I was just looking at maybe ideas of just simply capturing this pawn, being up another pawn, and then slowly converting my advantage with this pass pawn. So a very nice position. I'm glad I was able to show you these 3 games, because I just wanted to, I guess, show you some of the potential craziness and the potential tactics, tricks in the Smith-Morra. I think a very underappreciated opening, as black has got to play with absolute precision. If he just makes one simple mistake in the opening, or if he hangs one piece, his whole position tends to just crumble away. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. Stay tuned for some more videos, and I'll see you soon. Take care. Bye.